Hello, everyone, and welcome back to It's Okay Not to Be Fabulous Every Day. I'm Cyrus Webb, joined by Dalsimer, the author of the best-selling book that this show is based on. Well, welcome you guys tuning in on these simulcasts on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. Going to bring in our friends over on IG so they can be a part of our conversation. Last but certainly not least, going to connect with our friends over on Amazon Live. As I always say, we have another great one from Allie's book today. It's a great reminder for all of us, regardless of our age, that I think you guys will really appreciate. And we're now live on the Amazon Live platform with It's Okay Not to Be Fabulous Every Day. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, I'm going to type you guys in a welcome message over there. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button, though, either here in this corner or down below. You also will see Allie's book. You guys can get in print, the Kindle edition, or even the audio book as well. As I mentioned, this is season 3 of our series with Allie's book. This is our final season because we're going to wrap up the book this year. But Allie, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Cyrus. Thank you so much. How are you doing today?
Doing really good. Jane, hello to you over there on IG. Jane Ward, Ellie. She just released her new book this week. Got a
Oh,
chance to interview her on the radio show. So, Jane, thank you so much for watching us over
congratulations.
there.
I will have
uh,
to check that interview
yeah,
out.
on IG. I should say, make sure you guys stay to the end. Allie and I have a very special announcement that's coming up at the end of our broadcast today. But Allie, do have another great one today. Before we get into it, though, I was saying to you before we had our pre-conversation before the show that I found so many fascinating nuggets about this week's message. And I think there's an interesting connection to what we talked about before when it comes to parenthood and the way you feel about your children. I think, for me, as I've been thinking about this book and thinking about how this season is winding down, it seems like the latter part of this book, and I didn't think about it until we've been going through it, is a lot more introspective of you when it comes to, you know, what's kind of made you who you are, why you think the way that you think, and how you're able to navigate the world as you do today. Is that how it seems to you as we've kind of going through the latter part?
Yes. And that is intentional
Okay.
because the whole point is that journey, a journey to self-discovery and wanting people to really see see their journey through a personal lens. And
Mhm.
as you know, having read the book, the whole book is basically me putting it out there saying, this is me. You take this and put it to you, and hopefully you get something out of it. And so by sharing some of these personal stories and how these lessons apply in my life and examples from my own life, I'm hoping that people will find parallels with their own lives and be able to continue on in that way.
Yeah. I want to talk about Ali Dalsimer, the authority for a moment, because it's so interesting. This is another thing I thought about too when I was prepping for today and thinking about again this season, even though we didn't plan this. Again, like you said, the book is written this way. We've seen you, Ali, in stages. We've seen you dealing with grief. We've seen you dealing with loss, uncertainty, and then just trying to get through the day. Now we see you in the latter part of this book really stepping into your own, whether it is being able to run for office or, being able to take on these tasks. What was that, speaking of journey, like you mentioned the subtitle alludes to, what has that been like for you to reflect on how this book really does show in many ways your own evolution?
Well, as you know, the book was intended for my kids.
Hmm.
It was intended as sort of life lessons. Here's what I've learned. Please learn from my mistakes, learn my lessons so that you can make your own lessons going forward. You can do your own mistakes going forward, rather than repeat mine. And so I think in terms of sharing my journey and how I had come through, um, it's interesting because I really feel like when I was writing it, I was sharing this journey. I really did feel like I was sharing this arc of a journey.
Hmm.
But in retrospect, now looking back, I realized that I just created a framework. I set the path. And it's
Hmm.
really only been in the recent, in the last couple of years that I feel I've really progressed into that into that space and continue to move forward. And
Mm.
what's interesting about that is it's almost like you it's sort of that freshman, you think everything, you know everything, and then you're sophomore and you start to begin to realize that maybe there are things you don't know, and then you progress on, and pretty soon you realize, wow, I've learned a lot and I have a lot yet to go. And I feel
Right.
like that's kind of the journey that I've been on.
Got you. Got you. Well, one thing we will definitely see in this message before I turn it over to you, Allie, is that lessons that you've learned growing up, how they stayed with you, and how you've tried to make them your own. I think I picked up on that for myself. I thought about things that my parents and even my grandmother, things I saw from them, like I have mentioned before, I think on this show, I know I've mentioned it on my own show that my parents worked hard. We didn't have a whole lot, but they worked hard, and I saw them work hard. And some people would have focused on the sacrifice of us not having a lot of time together, but I saw it as an expression of love, them getting up every day, my mom working 2 jobs, my dad working, from, sun up to sundown, and making sure my brother had what we need. So I learned the importance of hard work without them saying, "Cyrus, work hard."
Mhm.
Because I saw what was the fruitage of that, and they were able to take care of their family. I think it's interesting in this lesson today, Allie, we see a bit of that. So I'm going to turn it over to you so we can go into today's message.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you mentioned
Yeah.
beforehand that
Yeah.
this chapter reminded you of something else. And I'm wondering if it reminded, because the word authority caught my attention. I wonder
Hmm.
if it reminded you of that, the interview that I gave on parenting.
That's what it was, because that was the
Yeah.
connection I found to the end. Exactly. That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That is it.
All right. Problem solved.
All right.
All
Right.
right. All right. Here we go. You've got to eat a peck of dirt before you die. Reverend Reese Price. My grandfather, Reese Price, was a Presbyterian minister from a Welsh coal mining family. He grew up between the two world wars. Everyone in his family, everyone he knew, nearly everyone in the UK, it seemed, grew a victory garden. When he and my grandmother emigrated to the US, they planted a wonderful garden full of tomatoes, corn, snap peas, potatoes, onions, and more. The garden was larger than the living room of their modest home, by a lot. In our early years, we grandkids spent our summers in Cape May, New Jersey, where his parish was. We spent hours picking ripened veggies, brushing off the dirt, and inevitably eating half of what we picked. We played in the rain, explored the nearby woods, and invented all sorts of games. Having that kind of freedom is less possible in today's world. Too many people and too much social media, all those fabulous people being fabulous all the time. Seriously? We, kids and adults alike, have become disconnected, have too little unstructured play and relaxation time, spend too little time having fun. When my husband and I looked for preschools for our kids, most touted their rigorous academic regimes. But we wanted our children to learn and grow to be happy and well adjusted. Surely playtime is equally important for learning. How does making a 2-year-old literally color within the lines foster creativity? How does overfilling days with structured educational activities teach independence? How does having a playground comprised of a blacktop surrounded by a fence where each child is given a ball stimulate imagination? In the end, we opted not to send our kids to these top preschools. Instead, we sent them to the preschools with the best and biggest playgrounds, ones that were messy and colorful, that allowed for lots of unstructured playtime, and where the teachers were kind and not disciplinarians. Today, as my children journey along their own life paths, they've grown increasingly compassionate and caring, creative and inquisitive. I couldn't be prouder.
I love that. And I should say, I didn't mention it, Allie, that today's message was found on page 105. If you have the print edition of the book, I also want to say, Jesus Black Man, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate the compliment. He says hello to you as well. He was just saying, take good care of the gas. And I appreciate that. I really, really do try to do that. Ellie, so this message is interesting. And as I said, it is one of those that I think remind us of an important thing. For one, kind of reminds you of the Joker in The Dark Knight. Don't take yourself too seriously, you know.
Okay.
And I think, of course, I mean, for him it's a little darker, but I think it is a great reminder. Now, I will say the criticism that people will say to my face, of me is that people feel like I don't have a lot of time to be free. I disagree with that personally, but I understand what they mean because of the way they frame having fun and enjoying yourself and that kind of thing. But I want to talk about what was instilled in you because I think it goes to what I was mentioning earlier, Allie, about the lessons I learned from my parents and my grandmother. What was it like for you to know that, hey, that playing is okay, that that's something that is okay? What was it like for you to reflect on that and knowing that that was seen as something important for your childhood?
Well, first, playing is not just okay, it's necessary, it's vital. Allowing children to explore and um, live without creative restriction is, I think, vitally important to developing well balanced and well adjusted adults.
Mm.
So I, you know, I loved, I loved playing in the summers. You know, my sister and my cousins and I, and we would play Gilligan's Island and Scooby Doo, and we'd go hunting for blackberries and raspberries and blueberries, and um, we really did have a lot of time. And you know, on the week on the during the weekdays, my grandfather's minister, so on the weekdays was his time off. He would take us to the beach, and we would you know, play in the waves and do all kinds of things. And it was really idyllic in a lot of ways. And I was sad when that time ended. And well, that's another story. But when I was 12, my father was stationed overseas, and we started spending summers there. But when it came time to look for preschools for my son at first, you know, first of all, the wait lists are crazy. So
Mm.
we started early, and we were just overwhelmed by how rigorous so many of these programs were. My husband also, he grew up in Southwest Georgia, you know, running around like a crazy kid, doing whatever,
Mhm.
riding his bikes and doing things were probably a little dangerous. I think one time when he was a teenager, he rode his bike across the ridge of a roof.
Oh,
It was just crazy stuff, but you know, had a lot of just fun.
yeah.
And I think that having that fun allows you to focus and work later.
Mm.
It also opens you up to all kinds of avenues of prospective futures that
Mm.
you may or may not have experienced otherwise. And so when we were looking at these preschools, and so many of them were like, yes, we do math from 10 until 10:30, and then we read a book from 10:30 until 11, and then we do this. And it was like, when do the kids go out and play? When do they just play? When are they just kids? Life is, you know, life is short, but really, life is long. Life is
Mm.
long. You know, you maybe get, if you're lucky, you get 80, 90 years, right? How much of
Mm.
that is your childhood where you don't have to work? You don't have to pay bills. You don't have to, you know, do whatever it is that adults have to do. You don't have to do homework. You don't have to do, it's so short. You get the
Yeah.
first 3 or 4 years of your life to just have fun and explore the distant regions of your own imagination.
Right.
And those years are foundational. Tons of research studies have shown this. You know, the first 5 years of a person's life are foundational for establishing who they are, what kind of person they will be, their outlook on life, all kinds of things. And we just both felt very strongly that we wanted our kids to be the best they could be. We wanted them to be the best thems they could be.
Right.
So
And I love the example you give. Hey, Kevin Taylor, good bit to see you. Rogers Entertainment, hello to you over there on IG as well. And to see you guys over there on YouTube. If you guys have any questions or comments, make sure you guys put those in the chat. So, Allie, I love what you said though in the book, and very deliberately bringing this up. And I think it's a good point where you talk about the things that you don't want necessarily. And you say, how does making a 2-year-old literally color within the lines foster creativity? I thought that was such a great point. It may seem like a little thing, but I think it goes to a bigger thing of none of us are perfect, especially children. None of us should be expected to get everything right, especially at that young age. And who's to say that coloring outside the line is wrong in itself anyway? Especially you look at the world today. I mean, there are so many people. That's what's how their work stands out because they're not. as conventional as other people. So their work stands out. What was it like for you? And I thought about this in an interesting way because you've talked about before about yourself, Allie, about, sometimes, putting certain pressures on yourself. What was it like for you to make sure that you didn't do that to your kids?
Yeah, that was something I worked hard at, actively worked hard at, because I've always felt kind of pressured to, do certain things in certain ways. And I remember, we've talked about the fact that I do have a degree in psychology, and
Yeah.
one of the things I studied was child developmental psych, and I've kept up with it. And one of the big lessons that I learned was, everybody talks about the terrible twos and all this stuff. I never had the terrible twos
Mhm.
because I learned that it's all about control and decision making. A 2-year-old feels very grown up. They feel absolutely competent and capable of making their own life decisions. Thank you very much. Right? Most adults are like, you're two. you know,
Yeah.
you're a year out of diapers. What are you talking about? And instead, I've leaned into that. I was like, okay, you're two. You're a big boy. You can do it. Fine. And so I allowed a lot of independent decision making. So, for example, getting dressed in the morning, I would say, do you want the red shirt or the blue shirt? And then, he had a choice, and he could make that choice, and he could take it. Now with my daughter, it's interesting because all kids are different. With her, I was like, do you want this one or this one? She said, no. Do you want this one? No. And so we established a new rule. You get three wardrobe choices. And if that doesn't work, here's a stool, dress yourself.
Mm.
She loved it. She was like, all right. And so I just got to the point where I would pull any three things that I was like, this. She'd be like, no, no, no. And it was a joke because it didn't matter what I put up. She wanted to dress herself. So she got on her stool and she picked her clothes, and, she was two. I never had terrible twos. My daughter had one temper tantrum in the grocery store, threw herself on the ground and started screaming. And my son and I were like, okay. And so we, stood there and waited. And then I looked down and I was like, are you done? And she was like, yes. Because it didn't matter. It didn't
Yeah.
matter because, it's all about control for a child. And I think
Mm.
what parents forget to understand when they're trying to make a 2-year-old color within the lines is that child knows what they're doing. They've
Mm.
forgotten what it is to be 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 when, they knew very well what they were doing, and adults really didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And remembering that children are bright, capable, competent, unique individuals who are capable of making their own decisions. Sometimes they need a little input or guidance, which you
Mhm.
can offer. But I think that's really the secret to trying to make sure that children know that they are able to do whatever they want in life.
Mm. Yeah. And I love too the idea, especially if we think about today. It's so different even than when I was growing up, and I think it's what sounds funny to even say, Allie, but it was almost understood. Grass was green, the sky was blue, the sun is yellow. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
yeah.
And we look at cartoons today, or look at movies today. That is not what it is not something. In fact, it makes it stand out when the sky is red, and
Mm-hmm.
um hey, oh, my mom's there. My mom says I'm impressed. Oh, thank you,
Aw.
mom. I don't know if that's an autocorrect or if you actually.
Well, the thing is too, though, Cyrus, one
Yeah.
thing about, like, for example, telling a child um, not to color outside the lines, what you are also telling that child is you are wrong. The way you
Yeah.
are doing it is wrong. And
Yeah.
you are crushing them. You're crushing their spirit. You're crushing their independence. You're crushing their 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 confidence in their own ability
Mm.
to succeed in life.
Right.
And it might seem like a small thing, but going back to the first 5 years being so formative, kids are sponges during those times. And like you said, you watched your parents working hard and
Mhm.
doing what they needed to do to provide for you.
Yeah.
And if they had told you, you've got to work hard, you've got to work hard, you've got to work hard, and then they didn't work hard, you wouldn't have worked hard. But the fact
Yeah.
that you saw them working hard is
Right.
why you work hard, because children do what they see, not what they're told.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a great example. Mom, I was talking good about you. You've been so proud. I don't know how much of that you caught earlier, but and that leads me to the last point I want to talk about, Allie. And I think it's a great tie-in for our audience because if they're wondering, okay, what's in this for me as adults, I think one of the big thing, and Allie and I were talking about this before we went live here, is to don't lose it. Don't lose the idea that it's okay to find enjoyment in life, as you heard Allie mention earlier. And I love you. I had a guest in Chicago said her mom said the same thing, Allie, that life is long. I had never heard that saying before until I have to now go back and find that interview because I can see her face but I can't think of her name. But she said that her mom used to tell her that life is long. Do what you will want to do. What do you hope our audience takes away from that about not letting those moments pass them by where they can be able to find that enjoyment, Allie?
I think what I really want people to take from this chapter, there are two things. One is playtime is important, not just for your kids, but for yourself. We've talked about recreation, the root word of that being to recreate, and the importance of having just free time to recharge and restore and re-energize and really just connect with yourself again. And I think the other thing I want folks to take from it is to really remember that kids are just little people. They're no different from you. They're absolutely you are the same when you're 2 as when you're 20 as when you're 60. You really are on the inside. It's just you learn more and you can interpret and do different things. But as a person, you're kind of the same person.
Yeah.
And it's important to try to remember that and have respect for their creativity and for yours, and to honor the time that you spend in non-work things. And before we got on air, Cyrus, you said something about people think you don't spend enough time in recreation.
Yeah.
And I would say, it goes back to last week's message about quality over quantity, right?
Mm-hmm.
The quality of the time you recreate is more important than the quantity. I mean, sitting on the sofa for 10 hours watching, mindless YouTube videos or whatever is going to be less restorative and less beneficial than 15 minutes raking leaves in the yard, or tossing a frisbee with your dog or with a friend.
Yeah.
I don't think the quantity of time we spend in play matters nearly as much as the quality of time we spend in play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, if I can add to that, Allie, the other thing for me that I take away as you were talking is that everything doesn't have to be so serious.
Yeah.
And I think if people could be able to remember that and to live that way, I think it makes the rest of life a whole lot more enjoyable, right? When you realize you can actually have that enjoyment. So again, everyone, another great message from Allie's book. So as I mentioned, we have a great announcement to bring you guys as we're wrapping up today, preparing for next week. Allie and I are going to be doing our very first in-person show together next Friday from Richmond, Virginia. So I'm very excited. Allie and I, we've worked together now for a while. We've never met in person. So you'll see us together on this program here on Amazon and across social media for the very first time. Allie, I have to say, I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about our selfie. I'm also excited about my priorities are pretty much set. I'm excited about the selfie. But I'm definitely excited about being able to meet you and to discuss this in person.
Oh, me too. I think we're probably more excited than people watching are, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. We'll catch them up though. We'll catch them up. So again, we will be here at same time, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central. Allie and I will actually be on the same time zone.
Yeah.
So that's going to be great as well. So Allie, definitely looking forward to that. Again, everyone, this is a message from Allie's book. It's okay not to be fabulous every day. You can get your copy here on Amazon, both the print, the Kindle edition, as well as the audiobook as well. It also is available in Spanish too. So make sure you guys do check that. I'm going to highlight it for you guys in the carousel as well. Allie, let our audience know how to stay connected with you, how to sign up for the newsletter, and how to be able to catch this season of So What's Your Process?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So, What's Your Process podcast is a show where my son and I talk with creatives from all fields about what they do and how they do it. And yesterday's episode, what drops on Thursdays, and yesterday's episode was actor and acting teacher Ryan Kessler, who also starred in my son's very first indie film, The Call, which we hope will start on um, the film festival circuit in the spring. So we're excited about that. And you can catch that at So What's Your Process on YouTube or follow us on Instagram. You can also find me under my name, Ali Dalsimer, on Instagram, Facebook. I've recently joined Blue Sky. So that's been kind of fun. It's a neat space. And yeah, sign up for my newsletter. It goes out every week. It alternates between author news and life advice, where, we talk about tips, tools, and resources to help you get along every day. And that's at alidalsimer.com/newsletter.
Love it. Well, Allie, excited about being able to meet you next week. I'm excited about my very first trip to Richmond, Virginia, and to Petersburg, Virginia as well, there with Stacey Thomas for her Power of Presence event. And definitely looking forward to you guys joining us as well. So make sure you guys are staying connected with Allie and myself. Again, I'll be in Petersburg, Virginia, and Richmond, Virginia, starting on I think that's the 19th, which is next week. And I'll be there until the 22nd. So excited about that. Until next time, though, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.